Welcome to Breathing with Bierman, the podcast. We're back. I have to say hello to Pat McDonald. It's been a while to see him too. Thanks for coming back, my producer, and doing his job remotely in Jamesburg, New Jersey. First, before I continue, if you like what you hear today, please subscribe to my podcast, my YouTube channel, Adam Bierman, or Instagram. And wherever else we have great social media patterns. I'm with my daughter here, Rachel Bierman, writer, publisher, author, grad student. Okay, today's guest is a Canadian author, filmmaker, investigative historian. He has a PhD in criminal justice. He knows about espionage. He dabbles in international relations. He's a Renaissance man, and he's an author on best-selling books about true crime and serial killers. He's currently writing a book about Richard Cottingham, who's in Trenton State Prison here in New Jersey. It's called American Werewolf, The Life and Crimes of Richard Cottingham, the lost serial killer on the left, what that means. We also had a friend in common, Jen Weiss, who sadly has passed away, but welcome first.
Thanks, Adam. Great to see you again and be back on. And hi, Rachel. She did a great interview with me a few months back.
You can find it on my book blog, Rachel Reads and Reviews.
Don't be shy.
I forget if I asked before, why is he a werewolf?
Because American Werewolf, because Cottingham was kind of living the American dream, an up and coming middle class, rising. With his generation, he comes from a Depression era generation, rising up into kind of an affluent lifestyle that the 60s and the 70s had promised us, including the 50s. So he was kind of the archetypical average guy with a wife and 4 children. But there was a dark side, and I chose the term werewolf because there was this lycanthropic aspect about how he would perpetrate his crimes. He didn't really fantasize very much the way typical serial killers do. He would act on impulse, without actually, like an animal. And I think there are reasons for that, but it made him a very rare kind of serial killer. His childhood biography was nothing like a typical serial killer's.
He didn't kill animals. He wasn't sadistic. He didn't kill animals, that's for sure. In fact, he used to raise pigeons, and anytime one of his pigeons would break a wing and had to be put down, he had to ask his father to do it because he says, I couldn't bring myself to hurt my pigeons. And he loves animals, and that was one of the ways some of the people I had been working with kind of as well established a rapport through him, through the pets they had, sending him pictures of pets. And I saw Cottingham weep only twice in the 7 years that I've been interviewing him, and one of them was when he was describing how he saw a police officer in New York shoot a homeless man's dog. Oh my God!
And he teared up.
I would.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So I began to realize that there is something different about this particular individual in terms of psychopathy and like I said, his childhood background. There's none of the stories of abuse and broken family. His family was intact. He had 3 younger sisters who adored him and supported him even after he was charged. They couldn't believe their big brother had committed these horrific crimes, and so I suspect his, if we want to call it motive, his drive is physiological as opposed to psychological, a brain injury.
Organic? There's an organic reason in his brain or something?
Yeah, it's an injury. It's a trauma. We often think organic as something that's inherently coming from the brain, like psychopathy we might describe as organic. However, this was external. This was a car accident that occurred when he was 4 years old, and I documented it. It had been family lore that when Cottingham was 4 years old, he ran headfirst into a car. And sure enough, I tracked down the story in the newspapers. His head injury was severe enough that it was recorded in the Bergen County Record. So that is often a factor in many serial killers' biographies, childhood injuries, and they're similar to the kind of injuries that we saw have an impact on behavior with NFL football players that took too many hits to the head, boxers as well. So it's plausible. Right. The only problem is proving it, and of course, Cottingham hates doctors. He hates hospitals. I've been trying to talk him into doing an MRI so we can look if there's scarring in his tissue. Right. And I've been talking to the world's expert on this, Dr. Keel. He scanned the brains of something like 5,000 incarcerated inmates who tested positive for psychopathy on the hair test, which is a standard psychological test that people administer to determine whether an inmate or a suspect is a psychopath or not. Well, and so Keel can look now at an MRI without knowing the subject's file and say, looking at this MRI, this guy would have tested positive on the PCLR test as a psychopath.
That's been proven true, and then they test them, and if they can test them, they can prove it.
Yeah, so he's got it down now to a science, and in fact, he's now called by defense attorneys in death penalty cases where they believe maybe the convicted person might have had physiological issues in the brain, and maybe they should go away for life rather than the death penalty. And so his testimony has mitigated actually a number of death penalty cases. But Cottingham is resisting. I'm not going to go see any doctor. When I die, I'll give you my brain. You can have it. Right? He promised that he'll pin a little note to his pillow that his brain is to be given to me in a jar of alcohol, and I'll get the brain to test it, but not while he's alive. He's just
Oh, those 5,000 prisoners, were they in the U.S. or were they all types of people, black, white, indigenous? What?
I couldn't tell you. The book is I think it's called The Psychopath Whisperer, if I'm not mistaken. Keel, Kiel is the professor. I know he's a Canadian, and he started in the Canadian system. Whether he was doing them in Canada or since he's moved to the United States, I couldn't tell you. I imagine they were in the American prison system. But he essentially tweaked the software for MRIs. He designed his own software. So the MRI machine is essentially the same machine, but the software that drives it is uniquely his. It makes the machine kind of do a much more denser scan than the medical software for it.
Do you have something? Oh, I was going to ask, going back, for those who don't know, Jen Weiss, who was from the Princeton area, you two were together. And for the backstory, Jen Weiss, who was adopted, thought that maybe Cottingham probably killed her biological mother in New York City.
And he was her father.
Yes, yeah. Whatever happened, I never got, and unfortunately, Jen has passed away. I mean, you said this might have taken a toll on her too, you think? A lot of questions in one sentence, but anyway.
Yeah, Jennifer, certainly when Jennifer first approached me, she was looking for what happened with her mother's head because Cottingham never revealed what he did with both the heads that he severed way back on December 2nd, 1979 in New York. One of the victims, Jennifer's mom, was identified partly because Jennifer existed. Jennifer's birth was a cesarean birth. And so Cottingham had cut off her mother's head and hands. So there was no face, there was no head, and there were no fingerprints. But there was a cesarean scar on the torso. So that narrowed it down a little bit. And then the other thing that happened was that Cottingham left her shoes behind. And the shoes happened to be a pair that were sold in very few stores and were traced to a Bamberger's in New Jersey, in Trenton, New Jersey. And so the police narrowed down now, who gave birth to a child recently by cesarean and might be missing. And that's how they identified Jennifer's mom. So Jennifer was a detective when she was 18 months old in a strange way.
Yeah.
She was, without her, if she hadn't been born, certainly, that identification would have been maybe impossible.
Well, you said
the other girl has not been identified. We
Oh.
still don't know who she is. And that's why Jennifer and I worked so hard at finding those heads and why the NYPD assisted in it and are still looking. Because the other girl, of course, can still be identified. We can if we can find her skull, we can reconstruct her face now. The DNA is less of an issue because her torso is buried in the same place Jennifer's mom is buried, on Hart Island, Potter's Field, out in the Bronx. But the facial reconstruction could assist in getting somebody to say, hey, that's my sister who went missing in 1979, or looks like my sister. The other thing, she had a very rare blood type. Her blood type, only something like 9% of the population has that blood type. So it could be narrowed down through DNA if the family had somewhere at some point posted up their DNA. It might be still tracked down. The problem has been extracting the DNA from the torso, geological shifting on Hart Island. NYPD attempted to do a drill and tap down without spending the money and the resources of doing a exhumation. New York, they're strapped budgets wise, and especially over the last 4 years as well. So that didn't work because of the geological shifting. They can't precisely now pinpoint where the unidentified girl is buried. They would have to excavate the entire row of graves and open them up to make sure that that's actually her, and hopefully get a DNA tap from her. So they attempted that. But if we could find those severed heads, then that would be a quick shortcut to everything.
You said that Cottingham was his killing was impulsive. What did you mean by that? And he was known as what? As the Broadway killer, not the Broadway killer. He was the Times Square killer.
Well, the press gave him the moniker, the Times Square killer and the Times Square torso killer and so forth. But those murders, they actually happened in Hell's Kitchen on 42nd and 10th Avenue.
Not alliterative, no. So
Yeah.
not alliterative enough.
Yeah, I guess they have to sell papers, right?
And now, yeah, and now it's not even Hell's Kitchen. I mean, now it's a real estate friendly Clinton's. All right, so even that changed. But
Right.
he killed all over. He killed as far as Suffolk County, Long Island. He killed up in the Hudson Valley. He killed around Poughkeepsie. He killed in Manhattan. He had a number of ground zeros in Rockland County, just
But do you
across the
believe
border
him?
from Bergen County.
Do you believe him when he tells you he killed? I thought serial killers sometimes would try to throw people off
Yeah, sometimes they
Sometimes they're
do.
really proud of it.
oh, okay. What is it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, they lie all the time. That's all
Oh,
they
they could be
do.
proud. Yeah.
But I believe Cottingham, first of all, cases have now checked out. We've closed, as of last December, a month ago, we've now closed, I say we, Jennifer's spirit is still in this. And a lot of things that Jennifer did when she was alive are still being carried on by Cottingham. Cottingham was very moved by Jennifer and despondent over her death.
Really?
Both of us were. I mean, Cottingham and I, in a way, became like I don't know, like two ex-lovers mourning our mistress's death. We were consoling each other, and both of us were saying the same thing. It should have been one of us, right? It should have been Cottingham first, who's in his late 70s. Then it should have been me. I'm 9 years younger than Cottingham. For God's sakes, not Jennifer in her mid-40s with three young daughters, including her fourth daughter, who's an adult, but three very young children. It was heartbreaking to see that happen, and happen so suddenly and so frighteningly, and we were. Cottingham is still confessing in honor of Jennifer, because she was the first one who kind of came across and said to him, I forgive you for what you did.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Why did she feel she had to say that? It just came out of their relationship.
I think it has to do with being liberated. Forgiveness is very liberating.
So it could be for Jennifer too.
She learned that.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think it was easy for her to do that, because she was 18 months old when her mother was murdered. So
her biological mother, she was adopted.
Her biological mother. So she had no sense of loss that way. Jennifer and I talked about this. In some ways, Jennifer would say, I don't know what my life would have been like if Didea, my mother, who was a drug addict and a sex worker, if she held on to me, I don't know what my life would have been. Sure. And she was brought up in a very loving family. They wanted her. She was adopted by a couple that had 3 sons, but desperately wanted a girl. And so they adopted her specifically because she was a girl, and she grew up in New Brunswick, New Jersey, in this loving home with 3 protective brothers and a mother and father that loved her, and it was a good thing. So in an odd way, Cottingham almost kind of I hate to say it, right? But he might have made her life better by, although, when I think it through, not exactly true, because Didea had given up Jennifer for adoption about a year before her death, 18 months before her death. So in a way, Cottingham actually killing her didn't make a difference, and. But still, she thought about it, how different her life would have been if Didea had not given her up for adoption and hung on to her in the life she was living. She obviously wasn't very happy. She had hoped that her pimp would marry her when she became pregnant. He did not.
Don't believe your pimp. That's one thing I have to always say. Yeah.
Sorry?
Don't believe your pimp. They're not the most reliable people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well. He told her up front, "I'm not marrying you." So,
Okay.
She was ready to, escape him. In fact, he was later complaining that she was taking notes in Farsi. She was from Iran. She was Persian. In fact, she was Bakhtiar, a kind of like a gypsy sub ethnicity in Iran. the Bakhtiar tribe, I know gypsy is a pejorative term, but calling the Bakhtiari Roma people, they're not, it's not the same thing. So I'll refer to them in the traditional or sense of gypsies, people who are migratory, who are regarded with contempt, and there was a network of Bakhtiar people in New York that Didea was connected to, and her father. Didea, we could never, even the police could not find her actual date of birth. We don't know to this day if she was 23 or 27. She worked under different identities. She gave different birth dates. And so we don't even know how old she was. And nobody, when I went through the NYPD files, the INS could find no trace of her entry into the United States.
Like true gypsy. You wanted to say something?
Oh, no.
Oh, you were ready to say something? Oh.
No, for a second I thought Cottingham was Jen's father. It was the pimp that was Jen's father.
No. The pimp was controlling her. Her real parents were Iranian gypsy immigrants.
No. I mean Jen. Her mother was Didea.
Yeah.
And her father was.
She thought that Cottingham might have been her father. Did that ever?
Yes. Gradually, Jennifer began to think. She saw physical similarities between herself, her own children, and Cottingham and Cottingham's face. And Cottingham knew Didea for a number of years.
In a business sense?
Cottingham, in fact, told Jennifer, one day I saw Didea when she was pregnant and I ran my hand over her pregnant belly for good luck. Right? Mm-hmm. So in a weird way, Cottingham met Jennifer when she was still, in Didea's womb. Gotcha. And so because Cottingham knew Didea, Jennifer began to suspect that he might be her biological father. It looks like he wasn't. And the statistics of that would have been, you might as well go buy a lottery ticket, better chance. So it looks like once, eventually the police, they tried to, the way familial DNA works, if you can't get the suspect's DNA, next best thing is you get a relative's DNA.
Right.
And so when Jennifer started making those, claims that she might be Cottingham's daughter, the police just swarmed her like flies. We'll do the DNA test for you. We'll do the DNA test for you in the hope that they could get a hold of her DNA and then incriminate Cottingham in a number of cases. Okay. And so the I've never seen the official returns, but cops tell me there was no match. Mm. And I got a sense of that from Jennifer. She didn't want to tell me because the premise of my book, of course, had been, when I sold it, was, we're looking for the severed heads, but we might find out that the guy who killed Jennifer's mom was actually her biological father. Was a National Enquirer twist end to a true crime book, right?
That would be.
And Jennifer, she was selling that story, but after a couple of years, she knew by then that he wasn't, and like I said, the odds were, and she did her own DNA testing, and she discovered, indeed, there was Persian blood in her DNA, and there was some Italian, but there was nothing Irish or Polish that Cottingham was. Wow. So that too. So she kind of let go of that, and Jennifer, she had her transformation. I mean, Jennifer had, when we did that show with you in Princeton.
God, 10 years ago, I think. Must be.
Yeah, 2019, I'm pretty sure. Maybe.
Oh, okay, it wasn't that far away. Okay, I'm getting
a long time, ages ago, right?
Right.
But she was still, kind of, she had that Facebook page called Serial Killers Need
Right.
Hugs, and she was very
Serial killers with
irreverent
hugs.
and
She was a
black
marketer.
humor. Yeah, and she got a lot of heat from people from that, but this was her mom, and if Jennifer wants to handle it with humor, that's her right and privilege to do so. So I certainly supported Jennifer. I kind of quietly said, Jennifer, there's a lot of people who are going to give you shit, but he didn't care. But eventually, as Cottingham began to confess, you see, Jennifer and I never set out to solve any homicides. That was not the deal I had with Cottingham. Cottingham was going to tell me about the murders he was already in prison for. He was going to give me the full story.
And why he did the impulsive ways.
Yeah, and who he was, and because nobody had interviewed him ever, other than Nadia Fitsani in 2009. She was the first. He kept quiet. See, that's when you asked me whether he lies. A lot of serial killers lie because they want the attention. Cottingham is the other way around. He hates attention. He hates confessing because every time he confesses, he gets a lot of shit from the guards, from people, from staff, especially as some of the victims were younger females. So he had problems every time he confessed when he would come back to the prison. And moreover, Cottingham is not exactly ashamed. He's embarrassed by the things he did.
So what's the difference?
If you can appreciate the subtle difference. Shame kind of has to do with remorse. He has no remorse. None. And he said to me, I don't know what it is. I just never felt remorse. He understands it intellectually.
That he should,
and
but
so
he doesn't.
But he doesn't feel it. Right. And he admits he doesn't feel it. He doesn't pretend. He says, I try to do what a remorseful person would do. I confess and I try to put people's families under their misery, right? But I don't feel it. And so I think that too is an aspect of that head injury. It's kind of mimicked psychopathy. Like I said, I described it as cognitive remorse. So he was doing that for Jennifer, and once we discovered that he is confessing to other murders, a lot of things changed. One of the things that changed for Jennifer is that she and I finally managed to convince the New York Medical Examiner's Office to release to her photographs of her mother.
Right. Postmortem.
Her birth. Yeah, right. Yeah, the one that Cottingham killed. Right. And so when Jennifer got those photographs and saw her headless, handless body on a steel slab and covered in cigarette burns and beaten and scratched with a knife and mutilated and burnt, the kind of, oh, Richie, my big baby, sometimes she used to call him Dad and Pops, all that evaporated. And she didn't let Cottingham know, but Cottingham sensed it right away, that her attitude changed. And I sensed that too. Everything that people were criticizing her, that she's so enamored with the serial killer, all that evaporated. She didn't have that fuzzy, my big baby feeling anymore for him. She kept up appearances with Cottingham, but you saw through that. And then I was speaking at a cold case conference in Albany, ASOC, the American Investigative Society of Cold Cases. And Jennifer came because it was in Albany, so not far from her to drive up.
Let me interrupt for 1 second.
Princeton.
We only got 5 minutes, so can you wrap this up? And then also, can you give us, tell us where to buy your books and everything else? Because I want to get that in.
Okay.
We have to do another interview, though. We only got 5 minutes, and then the Zoom goes off. Anyway.
Okay. Are you going to clip this? So I should just keep going to an end?
No.
Okay.
We're pretty straightforward. We like the spontaneity.
Okay.
Just keep going.
So I was just saying that after ASOC, when she saw other victim families. She realized how serious of a thing she could do now. And so serial killers need hugs too became the people versus Richard Cottingham. So that Facebook page is still out there, but it's not that light and breezy Facebook page it was. So
Okay.
so
Let me
that's
end
the
with this.
story.
Please, where can we? We're gonna have to do part two because I want more. I'll talk to Pat. It went so fast. Where can they buy your books? Your website?
So you can buy my books wherever books are sold. They're carried in most bookstores. They're on Amazon, of course, on anywhere books are sold. They're out there. They're out there in 10 different languages now. You can get them as of last week. You can get them in the Middle East, in Arabic even. The latest book is American Serial Killers. And Sons of Cain is my favorite of them, but there's 4 books out there right now, and I'm writing my 5th one, which is going to, of course, feature Jennifer and the story of Cottingham.
Any idea
and
when
the
it's going to be
confessions.
released? Any idea when it will be released?
I don't know. I'm right now. There's a big question whether it's going to be a series of books because the story has become so epic that I can't understand how it could be one book. And publishers, they love, like an 80,000 word book. I'm right now somewhere around 350,000 words, and how do I tell the whole story? Right, so we're going to see whether it's going to come out. The first one is going to come out this year as volume 1, or my publisher is just going to gut the book, and I can't see how they would though. So we'll know. I'm just editing the manuscript like a madman right now.
Okay, well, thank you. God, time goes too fast when you're having fun. Well, not fun, but interesting. I have so many more questions. I have questions from the crowd. Maybe we can come back later next month and do part 2. This has been your name again, Peter Vronsky. I always say that wrong. Is it right? How do you say it? Vronsky. And this has been Breezing with Bierman, the podcast. Peter Vronsky, Rachel Bierman, Adam Bierman. Buy his book, American Werewolf, and we got to go. Thank you.
Great seeing you. Anytime.